It spans more than 14,000 square meters and boasts a 50-meter-high bell tower. Its 7 kilometers of corridors connect more than 600 rooms, some overflowing with gold, paintings, and sculpture. This is the Hôtel de Ville in Paris. Built on the banks of the Seine, this monumental emblem of the French capital is twice the size of the White House.
The Hôtel de Ville is the largest in Europe.
Consumed by fire in 1871, the building was considered a total loss. But thanks to the ingenuity of the architects and builders, the Hôtel de Ville rose from its ashes to become one of the most prestigious places in the world.
The Hôtel de Ville is a little Versailles.
But more beautiful, bigger, more showy, more flashy, more sumptuous.
The Hôtel de Ville acts as a showcase for France.
More than 1,000 workers dedicated themselves to equipping the monument with avant-garde, state-of-the-art technology and completing it in less than 10 years.
There is a challenge for Paris to assert itself as one of these great international capitals of these great powers rediscovered.
You come inside and you're in a functioning, modern, even futuristic sort of office space.
How did these 19th century architects manage to identically recreate the facades of the old building while increasing its size? What techniques did they devise to ventilate, heat, and light such a gigantic space? What drove their unconventional choice of materials?
It was a testing laboratory for new technologies.
Now, guided by historical experts, you can witness the complete reconstruction of the Hôtel de Ville through computer-generated images and new and exclusive behind-the-scenes access. Come discover this exceptional monument as you have never seen it before and understand the secrets of its astonishing design. A unique architectural masterpiece built in the heart of Paris, the Hôtel de Ville is one of the most exceptional yet unsung megastructures of the French capital. The Hôtel de Ville of Paris. Common house for the 2 million inhabitants of the French capital, the Paris Hôtel de Ville is a veritable hive. 1,000 employees work there daily, and 163 councillors sit on the Paris Council 11 times a year. An open-air museum. There are 273 sculptures on its facades. Organized around 2 interior courtyards, the building has 600 rooms, including 30,000 square meters of office space and 2,300 square meters of reception rooms, covered by 44,000 square meters of parquet flooring. There are 7 kilometers of corridors. At 155 square meters in area, the mayor's office is larger than those of the President of the Republic and the Prime Minister. Palace of all superlatives, it has nevertheless had a tumultuous history. March 1871. Anger rumbles in the streets of Paris. Besieged throughout the winter by the Prussians, the French capital somehow survived. After the suffering they had endured, the Parisians did not accept the armistice signed with Prussia and were wary of the government which had retreated to Versailles. They feared seeing the royalists return to power. In response, Paris experiences an insurrectionary period, the Commune. It opposes the regular army of Versailles to the Parisian rioters. This civil war will last more than 2 months, from March 18, 1871, until the Bloody Week in May of the same year.
In the middle of this bloody week, the 24th, the regular army enters Paris mainly from the west. It travels like a steamroller towards the east of Paris, and obviously, in the middle, there is the Hôtel de Ville. The Hôtel de Ville is the center of the seat of the Commune. So it is the government of the commune, and since the commune is defeated, since it has lost, well then we're going to pursue a scorched earth policy. Symbolically, we're going to destroy the Hôtel de Ville.
The Hôtel de Ville burns for a week.
The Hôtel de Ville was a wooden frame. There were also a lot of archives. There was a lot of paper, so obviously that fed the fire.
Only the cut stone walls and arches resisted the flames fueled by the explosives stored in the building. The upper floors, closest to the roof, supported by a wooden frame, collapsed like a house of cards.
Everything will disappear, including the civil status of Parisians, all the works of art that were inside. All that goes up in smoke. The ruin is impressive, only walls remain.
On the morning of May 25, 1871, the Hôtel de Ville was nothing more than a blackened carcass. Proclaimed on September 4, 1870, after the defeat of Sedan, the Third Republic will take 5 years to impose itself. But in Paris, the city is quickly acquiring representatives. In July 1871, the city council decided to rebuild the Hôtel de Ville.
We refuse to keep the ruins as a sort of museum of horrors. We believe that it is not worthy of the municipality, it is not worthy of Paris.
And for a little while, it was a question of, well, what should we do with it? Should one just try and start from scratch, a new design, a 19th century design, or should one somehow pay homage to this rather extraordinary Renaissance building built in the 16th century?
A competition is open, the closing date of which is set for January 31st, 1873.
This competition will put 69 architects against each other, prestigious architects.
On June 10, 1873, the winners were chosen. They were the architects Théodore Ballou and Édouard Despert. The first has already worked a lot for the city of Paris. He restored the Saint-Jacques Tower and built many churches. He has already collaborated with the second winner, Édouard Despert.
So, it's, I dare say, a fine team. And above all, they probably won because they were completely in line with the competition. The competition was still quite restrictive.
If the jury has chosen their project, it is because it responds perfectly to the requirements. While retaining the exterior look of the building that burned down, the new Hôtel de Ville must also be larger and more functional.
They asked to add approximately 1,830 meters squared. So this was the ambiguity of the competition. To reproduce the facade exactly, but also to enlarge the spaces. So it was very ambiguous.
The project selected plans the removal of the central trapezoidal courtyards, the installation of spiral staircases in the corner of the courtyards, larger corner pavilions, the removal of 6 meters from the wings on the facade, and the development of leaps and bounds, a sort of moat surrounding the building. Work began in 1873. Basically, architects are asked to restore what can be restored. If certain sections of the facade still seem to be standing, this is not the case for the basement. While digging through the rubble, the architects made surprising discoveries.
There are all sorts of traces of what was here before. A few shafts, pillars, a few pieces of wall. So we are in a kind of field of ruins which are weakening these old bases of the Hôtel de Ville.
The architects unearthed the foundations of the first Hôtel de Ville in Paris. Its history dates back to the middle of the 13th century, when Parisians began to organize themselves to manage the city and its river trade.
These merchants, who were such an important group within the city, wanted to establish a headquarters where they could basically run the city, run the commune of Paris, and that is really the first city hall.
Over time, this ancestor of the town hall of Paris, called the Maison aux Piliers, fell into ruins. In the 16th century, Francois I, King of France, decided to build a new Hôtel de Ville on the same site.
Francis I was a king who, at the time, was very modern, a builder king. And so he wanted a city hall, naturally in the Renaissance style, since it was the modern style of the time, fashionable at the time.
And for that, he called on an Italian architect that he himself chose, Dominique de Cortona, known as the Bucador, the Golden Mouth, maybe because he had a blonde beard. We don't actually know. And this character will rebuild Town Hall, I was going to say, as we know it today, or at least in its core.
The Hôtel de Ville, designed by Bucador, is made up of a single one-story building on the ground floor, flanked on either side by two-story square pavilions. It has two arches. One is closed by a door, while the other, on the Seine side, remains open to allow the passage of pedestrians and carriages. The current facade on the forecourt of the Hôtel de Ville is a replica of that of the Renaissance, except that the entire building was raised and surrounded by side wings. Started in the middle of the 16th century, this Renaissance-style Hôtel de Ville was only finished in 1628. Lined with residential houses, it dominates the Place de Grève, an important supply port for the capital. At the beginning of the 19th century, to fight against frequent flooding, a quay was built 6 meters above the level of the Seine. In the 1830s, having become too small, the Hôtel de Ville underwent a spectacular expansion.
The architects are going to use this initial core of the reborn Hôtel de Ville, build around it, enlarge it, and are going to build facades on the Croix de Grève, on the Rue de Rivoli, and on the back of Rue Le Beau.
It is one of the most sumptuous palaces in the capital, which hosts grandiose receptions. At the same time, the area around the Hôtel de Ville is transformed. On the forecourt, the last houses are raised. Since the Middle Ages, the Place de l'Hôtel de Ville has quadrupled in size. It occupies nearly 13,000 square meters, the equivalent of 2 football pitches. To clear its access, housemen raised 9 streets to create the Avenue Victoria, 400 meters long, which connects the Place du Châtelet to the Hôtel de Ville in a straight line.
The Avenue Victoria, which was named after the visit of Queen Victoria in the 1850s, comes plumb up from east to west. So you've got this monumental view of the Hôtel de Ville in front of you, so that you can see it to its best advantage.
This palace, which has survived the centuries, has not withstood the destruction of the Commune. After 2 years of excavating the ruins, the decision is made to start from scratch. Facades that barely stand up are raised. Stones and retaining beams of the previous constructions are then completely cleared, found up to 6 meters below at the level of the River Seine. The idea of the builders is to rebuild from a completely smooth and non-porous surface. First step, clear the ground. Near the Seine, the Hôtel de Ville sits on waterlogged ground. A system of pumps is therefore set up to clean up the base of the future construction. Second step, to guarantee the water tightness of the new building, a concrete platform 1 meter thick is poured over the entire 11,400 square meter surface. That is more than 11,000 meters cubed of concrete, the volume of 4 Olympic swimming pools. From this concrete base, the architects will begin to work. The Hôtel de Ville has been thought out down to the smallest detail, as evidenced by these period architectural drawings, carefully preserved in the library of the Hôtel de Ville, called Cahiers de Calpinage.
It's a series of technical drawings that present the different architectural elements, the different construction elements that will allow both the architects and the contractor to know what has to be done. So we have a façade of the Hôtel de Ville, the one that overlooks the Rue de Rivoli, the basement, and the first floor, the first level, which already gives us an idea of what the Hôtel de Ville will look like. And we're at the very beginning of the process, since it's 1873.
Each plan is signed by the architects and served as a work order for the various contractors and suppliers. The building will be constructed of dressed stone. Materials must arrive in sufficient quantity so that the site does not experience any interruption. In October 1875, work on the base of the ground floor began. In July 1876, the walls of the ground floor and the first floor on the central part begin to rise. But new difficulties appear.
From 1876, the site stopped because the contractor who was responsible for the earthworks and masonry no longer provided the necessary stones. So we're going to replace him. We're going to take on another contractor who owns quarries, so we're going to take over the site and supply the site thanks to his quarries.
These quarries are located in Aire and Yonne. The extracted stones are transported by river to the site. Merchandise barges operate on the Seine and its tributaries. The Haute Seine provides most of the building materials, such as sand or brick. Extracted in the mines of the north, the coal is loaded onto barges, which take the Saint-Quentin Canal to reach Paris.
The natural route for transporting materials in the 19th century was the Seine. We are rediscovering it today, but in fact, it was the main way to transport heavy things in the 19th century. These ports, in fact, are distributed along the Seine. You have to imagine that what today constitutes two quays was a succession of specialized ports. Ports in wood for the construction of firewood. There are ports where cut stone is unloaded.
Thus, Burgundy wines are unloaded at Quai d'Apercy, wheat at Quai de Grève, and coal, necessary for the operation of steam engines, at Quai de Grand Augustin. From the quay, the builders face a new challenge. The Place de la Hôtel de Ville is located 6 meters above the port which borders the Seine. How do you hoist these blocks of stone, which can weigh up to 5 tons, to the height of the site? Manufacturers have a major ally, the jack, and above all, the steam engine.
This era is marked by a renewal of practices, in particular, a new importance given to mechanization.
Of course, it affects everything related to the transport of materials. It's fundamental in construction, transport. Transport to bring materials to the site, and then transport inside the site.
The blocks of stone are first hoisted onto the quay using steam cranes, which deposit the blocks on platform wagons. Consisting of a frame covered by an oak floor, they can transport blocks weighing up to 20 tons, or the weight of 3 elephants. They circulate on rails or overhead cranes and are towed by animal or human power. The stones are cut on site before being raised to the desired level using scaffolding towers. A semi-mobile steam engine makes it possible to hoist the materials to the desired level thanks to a belt fitted with a chain.
This coupling of this horizontal transport and vertical transport of building materials on rails will extremely speed up construction times.
The project is gaining momentum. 385 workers worked there daily in 1878, 909 a year later, and there were nearly 1,000 in 1880. To increase the pace, night work was introduced in 1874. The site was lit by electric light, and Sundays were not a day of rest.
The idea is to go into overdrive, to complete the town hall for the July 14th celebration, a new national holiday restored in 1880 by the Third Republic. We are in a construction site where the structural work will take place from 1873 to 1882.
At the end of 1879, the main body of the building was raised to the level of the cornice, and the 8 pavilions, with enlarged dimensions, were almost finished. In 1880, we start the roof. A year later, the exterior facades are completely finished. The building is imposing, 143 meters long and 80 meters wide. It is an immense rectangular quadrilateral bordered by 4 corner pavilions, which dominate the rest of the building by 1 floor. The old main courtyard in the center is now covered. It is framed by 2 symmetrical courtyards, which are entered through 2 large arcades. Comprising 5 floors, the building occupies a total area of 55,000 square meters. In less than 5 years, architects and builders have accomplished a real feat, building a colossal palace of more than 1 hectare in area, while carefully restoring the Renaissance facade of the Bocador.
The Bocador building had to remain visible and legible in relation to the additions, either by raising the facade or by adding an additional floor. Some even asked for different coloring.
To bring out this facade, Ballou and Depert choose to move the side wings back 6 meters. Apart from this difference, the Hôtel de Ville looks just like the one that burned down. The ingenuity of the architects will be concentrated in the layout of the interior spaces in order to make them more functional.
Ballou has positioned all these elements quite logically. The perfect apartments and offices were therefore busy facing the Seine, which was normal since it was there that the perfect lived, and where he was called upon to receive visitors. So this view of the Seine was important. Administrative services, therefore, on the other side, on the Rue de Rivoli, was easy access for the public.
Symbolically, the municipal council chamber, the heart of political power, is placed in the center of the facade of the Bocador, the one that overlooks the forecourt. The reception rooms are placed at the back of the building and form an L shape. They communicate with the office of the prefect of the Seine, who occupies the function of mayor of Paris at the time. In 1881, inside the building, plasterwork and partitions were completed. The architects will focus on the layout of the various rooms and lounges. No question this time of using wooden frames and floors, which greatly contributed to the spread of fire in the old building. The architects will favor iron in the structure.
Iron was used previously in construction, but in relatively small quantities because it was expensive. However, in the 19th century, its price decreases, and we see the appearance of diversified metallic materials, such as iron, cast iron, or later steel, which will be produced from processes which make it easier to obtain. These are the famous T sections, I sections, etc., which give rise to real metal structures.
The interest of these metal structures is to use elements that are mass-produced and then assembled on site. This obviously makes it possible to limit the duration of the construction site to the installation time.
These metal frames offer greater spans than those made of wood, which makes it possible to reduce the number of load-bearing walls and to design larger openings. Ideal for ceremonial rooms, which must accommodate hundreds of people during balls or banquets, such as the main ceremonial room located on the 2nd floor of the west facade. Behind the gilding and paintings of the ceiling hides a metal frame. Rounded trusses are connected to each other along the length by sandpits. covered with purlins, which accommodate masonry elements. To maintain this frame that tops the reception hall, hip trusses secure the structure to the iron floor of the upper floor. This metal vault rests on stone pillars. Both robust and light, it means the arches are open on one side. Both guests and servers can move around easily.
We are here above the reception hall, above the dome, above the ceiling of the reception hall. Here we find the structure with all the elements riveted together. We brought in sections riveted on site, which facilitated the implementation of the pre-designed elements in the factory. The rivet is a wonderful invention of the 19th century since, in fact, it makes it possible to link parts together while preventing them from moving. It is much better than bolting, but it is an extremely physical operation. It employs between 3 and 4 men since, in fact, these rivets are placed hot. One must hold the rivet while the other taps the hot rivet before it cools. It is an extremely physical activity.
These prefabricated iron structures are ubiquitous in the Hôtel de Ville, but carefully hidden. At the time, they were tolerated in factories, trading halls, stations, but not in a Republican palace. Their camouflage is a real mastery, especially in the library, located on the 5th floor above the reception hall.
When you enter this reading room, even today, well, it feels like seeing Harry Potter's house. That is to say that we are in a library full of woodwork, cracks, completely classic libraries. In fact, the reality is that we are in the presence of great modernity, since the vaults, the arches, are made of iron. Except that it's an iron that is hidden under a small wooden casing that gives the impression that everything is made of wood. The large panels that form the ceiling look like wood. It's a perfect trompe-l'œil because it's actually plaster. We're in a structure that is completely modern, but we didn't want it to be known that it is.
The library is a vast nave of 600 square meters, nearly 10 meters high. To free up as much space as possible in the reading room and store more than 500,000 books and manuscripts, the framework rests on cast iron columns which reduce the points of support. They support rafters, oblique beams which carry each slope of the roof. This frame is strong enough to support a zinc roof, which houses glass panels in its central part. They provide the room with natural overhead light for the greatest comfort of readers.
Glass will be part of public buildings. We know how to produce it, and at a much lower cost. And above all, we manage to have glass sheets that are larger. This is the main innovation.
Towards the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, we put lighting in. We managed to have uniform light throughout the day by playing with both artificial lighting and natural lighting.
Particular care is given to natural light, as well as to the ventilation of the rooms. At that time, the fight against epidemics was of great concern. Typhus, smallpox, tuberculosis, and cholera claimed thousands of victims.
This 19th century hygienist desire is omnipresent. So 19th century architecture goes out of its way to try to fight against that.
Balou and Rebirth will have to imagine a whole set of systems to make the building as healthy as possible. It must be at the same time airy, bright, and without pockets of humidity to prevent it from becoming a focus of infections.
We used to build buildings, and once it was built, we said, well, how are we going to heat it now? And so there, we ran into problems running pipes. So everything was thought out at the same time as the reconstruction.
We had the idea of integrating a heating and ventilation system into the architecture. That's something very new. It's what we call functional architecture.
The famous architect Viollet-le-Duc, who restored Notre Dame a few decades earlier, was to invent a revolutionary ventilation and heating system. It is based on a vast reserve of fresh air which circulates in the basement. Built above the concrete platform, this basement 3 meters high has many openings on the outside, which ensures a constant renewal of air. It is therefore a huge crawl space from which air shafts rise in all the wings of the building. In summer, they serve as natural air conditioning. In winter, these wells house a heating system still visible in the basement.
So we are here in one of the heating shafts of the Hôtel de Ville. The recommended heating was steam. It was the only way to heat with a lot of large power rooms that were quite far from the point of heat supply.
The steam is produced by 6 coal-fired boilers installed in the basements. The water, once heated to over 100 degrees, turns into steam which rises to the floors via a piping system.
The steam, precisely that was its advantage, didn't damage the pipes as if it had been water. There was no mechanical impact inside since the pressure is very low. This allows it to be transported high enough.
This is sufficient to heat offices of modest dimensions, which have private stoves. One problem remains, however: how to produce enough heat for the phenomenally sized second-floor rooms. The air shafts will find a second use. The pipes do not go up directly to the floors. They first cross a set of finned batteries installed in the shafts, 3 meters higher. They increase the heat exchange service with the cold air coming from the basement. In contact with these fins, the air heats up. Becoming lighter, it rises in the ventilation shafts to the upper floors. This system is so efficient that it still works today, even if dusty.
It still works. We can thus heat the air with fairly low outside temperatures. We can reach 40 or 45 degrees air temperature at the exit in the rooms.
In these huge rooms on the second floor, which communicate with each other and are plagued by drafts, an underfloor heating system is installed to better distribute the heat.
There are 4 wells per room that bring in hot air. The hot air is diffused in the rooms by various grills.
The ventilation shafts emerge under the floor of the lounges, which include a crawl space 1.2 meters high. Ducts transmit the hot air to the various grills installed on the floor. As for the ventilation shafts, they blend into the decor.
This decoration is in oak and is based on the bricks, which are fairly rough masonry. And we took the opportunity to make ventilation shafts that go up to the upper floors, which brought either fresh air, natural outside air for ventilation, or heated air.
Transportation of materials, mechanization and construction techniques, steam heating system, prefabricated iron structure are not the only touches of modernity at the Hôtel de Ville. It will become a veritable laboratory of new technologies from the end of the 19th century. Many are still in their infancy.
Between the beginning of the construction of the Hôtel de Ville and its inauguration, a multitude of technical innovations appear in various fields, affecting lifts, electricity, and telephones, which will have an impact on the equipment of this great building.
How to light this vast building? At the time, public streetlights ran on gas, while in private homes, oil lamps or candles were used.
In 1878, it was the first public display in the world of electric street lamps. I mean, they're pathetic, but they were street lamps, showed the future.
Edison's incandescent lamp was only invented in 1879 and presented to the French at the International Electricity Exhibition in 1881.
In the 19th century, there obviously was not a totally unified electrical network. On the contrary, there was a multitude of small networks of small power stations.
These concessions are granted to private companies to produce electricity and transport it by aerial cables drawn above the roofs. The distribution network was therefore fragmented, and the architects quite simply decided to create their own electrical factory in 1883. Due to a lack of space in the basement of the Hôtel de Ville, an electricity production plant is installed in a building located nearby on Rue Lebeau. Steam engines run electric generators that power batteries. The stored electricity is then sent by cable across the street. This complex machinery cannot at the time provide enough energy for the whole building, which remains lit with gas. Only the ceremonial lounges and the prefect's office benefit from the electricity ferry, which literally dazzles the guests.
We arrived at the reception in the reception hall with a magical twinkle. And there it was. That's it. We were going towards the electric lighting, and we really showed the splendor of the receptions.
The Hôtel de Ville will also be equipped with telephones and hydraulic elevators, which are only at the prototype stage.
It's one of the first buildings, apart from one or two hotels, to install lifts. And the lift is very new. I mean, it was in the 1867 International Exhibition in Paris that people came from New York and Chicago and showed the lift.
Behind the real quality of the technical devices, behind the real quality of the materials, there is an extremely important faith in progress.
From the outside, nothing reveals this modernity. The Hôtel de Ville is surmounted by a bell tower, the last architectural element to be built. It reaches a height of 50 meters above the forecourt. 3 bells weighing nearly 4 tons, connected to the large clock on the facade, tell the time for Parisians who have finally found their municipality. On July 13, 1882, 11 years after its destruction under the Commune, the Hôtel de Ville was inaugurated.
By 1882, it's a functioning building, and I think this sort of expresses the importance in a city as huge as an international city, but also a great national city as well, of having a functioning and monumental and impressive city hall.
But the Hôtel de Ville is not finished. In fact, it's the structural work that's finished for the interior decoration. There's a huge amount of work to come, and that will last for years. We can say between 1882 and 1906 for the most part.
For the interior decorations, the Hôtel de Ville will use the aesthetic codes of the past.
So the Hôtel de Ville is a living paradox. We wanted to highlight progress. But at the same time, we believe in continuity, and we have a desire for prestige. But prestige until then was essentially monarchical buildings. One thinks of the castles of Loire or the imperial palaces. The idea is to find in the buildings, in the Hôtel de Ville, elements that are codes of the monarchy.
Coffered ceilings, fireplaces worthy of enthroning in castles, parquet floors of precious wood such as rosewood or amaranth, silk hangings, or even polychrome marble. We do not think about the cost.
The living rooms are gilded with leaf. At the Hôtel de Ville, it is gold leaf, which is not even the case at Versailles. There are 98 baccarat crystal chandeliers in the Hôtel de Ville in Paris, and the largest weighs between 450 and 500 kilos. So see, it really is the will of the Republic to do the best possible for the House of the People.
"96 painters are called upon to beautify the municipality.
The Third Republic only wants classical artists who are representative of their time. All the artists present at the Paris Hôtel de Ville are major artists of the moment and are very fashionable. The Republic does not want modern artists. The Impressionists are not at the Hôtel de Ville. No avant-gardism at the Paris Hôtel de Ville.
They exalt the work of the fields, the history of Paris, and its struggles to conquer municipal freedoms, but also the arts and science. Here, there is no sovereign in majesty or allegories on the power of divine right. Republican values are nestled in the details, as in the reception hall, a copy of the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles.
You'll notice straight away little homages, particularly to Versailles. So, you know, the famous Hall of Mirrors is sort of replayed in a very sort of Republican version, a very national version with all sorts of national insignia all the way around it. The gold, the splendor, the chandeliers.
We will find other monarchical codes through the monograms. The monograms that we see in all the castles, the monograms of the prince, the king, the queen, etc., there will be RF, République Française. We have, for example, very beautiful cartridges with a motto, except that this is not the motto of a prince or the motto of a king. It is liberty, equality, fraternity.
All crafts are used to decorate this palace.
We are going to try to rediscover old techniques, artisanal techniques that were used in the Middle Ages or that were used in the Renaissance. And that gives rise in the 19th century to mosaics, to stained glass windows, which, to us, seem to us to be part of a continuity, but which, in reality, are technical innovations.
The stained glass windows of the Council Gallery list those who have ruled Paris since the Middle Ages. Provosts of merchants, governors general, prefects of the Seine, and since 1977, mayors of Paris. This gallery leads to the council chamber. A Republican palace, the new Hôtel de Ville obviously cannot reproduce a throne room. This is symbolically replaced in the center of the main façade by the meeting room of the municipal council. The elected representatives of universal suffrage thus take the place of the sovereigns. The council chamber is adorned with oak paneling and tapestries from Aubusson, a former royal factory. The Emperor Napoleon III initially commissioned the tapestries that still adorn the walls.
Their construction was delayed, so they were not installed in time in the first Hôtel de Ville, and therefore they survived the fire. And after the fire, these tapestries, which were not completely finished, were slightly modified.
Under the imperial eagle, it is enough to embroider universal suffrage to transform a tapestry intended for the Emperor Napoleon III into a Republican model. More than 230 sculptors are involved in the interior and exterior decoration. 108 statues of personalities will fill the niches of the facades. Choosing who will have this honor is a thorny question.
We needed selection criteria. We decided that we would take the characters born in Paris that already made it possible to make a pre-selection to make things a little easier. But suddenly, we discarded a certain number of characters who were already in the previous statuary of the Hôtel de Ville.
An exception is made for Bourdon, the architect of the old Hôtel de Ville, Italian by birth, but he takes on the features of the new architect, Théodore Ballou.
They realize this is also a place of splendor, so they bring in the artisans, the artists, to make this also a very beautiful, a hyper sort of grand setting as well, but a Republican setting which shows the imperial and monarchical past is well and truly past, and the present and the future is going to be Republican.
A strategic place of power, a showcase for France, it was understood that the Hôtel de Ville could be a target in a war. In the 1930s, a bunker was added in its bowels.
This blockhouse was built between the two wars. They felt that the period was troubled and that there would be a second.
Located in the basement under the courtyard of the prefect, now renamed Cour du Maire, this bunker is bigger than 800 square meters in size. It is protected by a huge concrete wall almost 2 meters thick, closed by strong and watertight doors. There is a particular concern about chemical bombardments, like those with mustard gas, which caused devastation during the First World War. It has about 10 rooms that communicate with each other.
This blockhouse was planned for 20, 25 people, and everything was made for it, built to live there permanently. There was a hygienic air network, a drinking water network, and an electricity supply. So you could live there for 3 weeks, a month, just with a supply while staying undercover.
To renew the oxygen, a fan system is installed next to the bunker. It brings outside air which is filtered beforehand. Its occupants must also be able to communicate with the outside world. The blockhouse is equipped with a telephone network, but also with a pneumatic system for sending letters. Used from the design of the building, the pneumatic post makes it possible to convey letters thanks to the energy produced by a pressure difference in the tubes. A compressor sends air into the pipes, while a pump at the ends of the network sucks the air in the tubes. The messages are sent with an average speed of 40 kilometers per hour to their sender. In 1934, the date of construction of the blockhouse, the Parisian network covered 427 square kilometers, enough to communicate with the other administrations, but it will not be necessary.
The blockhouse has never been used. No one has ever been confined, if I may say so.
Paris, lui, au contraire, s'arrache à ses 4 années de captivité. Libération! Le général de Gaulle, qui fut le premier à vouloir cette libération, est entré à son tour dans la ville libre.
Paris was not bombed, and it was at the Hôtel de Ville on August 25, 1944, that General de Gaulle gave his famous speech to celebrate the liberation of Paris.
Paris brisé, Paris martyrisé, mais Paris libéré.
A liberated Paris finds peace, and the Hôtel de Ville fulfills its vocation of reception and showcase for the whole of France.
In the Hôtel de Ville, we have a constant. It is that the Hôtel de Ville is also designed to receive, to welcome, and to welcome great people.
Queen Elizabeth, Nelson Mandela. There were very important people who came to the Hôtel de Ville. Any head of state received by the President of the French Republic for a state visit is received by the Mayor of Paris at the Hôtel de Ville in Paris. This is also the case for the President of the French Republic. After his election, it is customary for him to be received at the Hôtel de Ville.
These prestigious guests take the escalier d'honneur. They access it through the vestibule des fêtes, which forms the lower landing. Built parallel to the main facades of the Hôtel de Ville, this double-flight staircase leads to the reception rooms. Topped by a barrel vault, it is designed to dazzle visitors. Every year, the Hôtel de Ville hosts between 400 and 600 receptions and conferences.
It's a living building, and that's the objective. It is a building that is well maintained. There have been many restorations, improvements. The lighting of the party hall, it has been modernized, and therefore we have lighting that can vary in color, and which highlights the ceiling of the reception hall in a rather surprising way.
No need for an invitation to enjoy the entertainment on the forecourt.
It's still a sort of place of festivities. They have the big TV screens for the World Cup or the Tour de France or whatever. They do ice skating in the winter. So that's a tradition with some sort of continuity.
Since its inauguration in 1882, the Hôtel de Ville de Paris has not undergone any major architectural transformations. Although the building is not listed as a whole, certain rooms are listed in the inventory of historic monuments, such as the council chamber, the library, and the reception rooms. It is possible to visit this sumptuous Republican palace by appointment, or during Heritage Days. Its forecourt remains a focal point of Parisian social life.